Hey folks, Sin here. Today we are brewing. So when the 22Q came out, the very first thing that I built was a white-black control deck. Um, Back in normal standard before they subbed out this 22 only Q, Kaya was powerful, but not a card that could shine. Um, the main problems with her at the time were numerous ways to remove, so she could usually not stick. Um, so when 22 came out, the second deck. So the first deck I made was actually a Golgari Elves. The second one was a white black control, so day two of the queue. And so I know then later CGB and some others kind of propagated the treasure package variant, and that kind of picked up steam for a little while and fell off again. The main reason it fell off again is because this is actually a very complex planeswalker. The ways she's used are very complex. So up front, she seems pretty simple. 3 white and a black. +1, put a ghost form counter on up to one target non-token creature. It gains when this creature dies or is put into exile, return it to its owner's hand, and create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. So that is an extremely powerful +1. Whatever you put that on, let's say, for example, you put that on a Shambling Ghast, and the opponent plays Skyclave Apparition, goes to exile it. So the exile effect will trigger. It will move to go under the Skyclave, but then immediately return to your hand. You'll get the 1/1 white spirit creature token, so you get it back. Likewise, if they just kill whatever that thing is, you get a 1/1 white spirit creature token, and your creature goes to hand. Also, those counters stack. So if you amass 3, 4, 5 counters on the creature, when that dies or is exiled, you'll get, let's say you had 5 counters, you'll get 5 1/1 tokens on board. Very, very powerful. -3, exile target non-land permanent. So you can pump her up, then exile something, you can drop her, exile something, and as long as it's not a land, it's anything. And it's an exile effect, so bypasses any destruction issues, so indestructibility. So problem enchantments, artifacts, creatures, whatever, just get rid of it. And then the -7, really icing on the cake here. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may cast a legendary spell from your hand, from your graveyard, or from among cards you own in exile without paying its mana cost. So that very last part, or from among cards you own in exile. So essentially what this means is if you get Kaya up to 7 and you immediately minus her, the following upkeep, you can just play her back again for free. If you have 2 Kayas, let's say one in the graveyard already, and you did your emblem and she's now at 1, your following upkeep, you can bring the one from your graveyard back, replace the one that's at 1, now you have Kaya at 5. If you have Kayas or other legendary creatures that have been exiled in the game, maybe Baleful Mastery, Shadow's Verdict, something like that, you can cast them again for free. So the key is, though, legendary. They have to be legendary spells. Not just creatures, but spells. So you can get Kaya, any other planeswalker, Redain, for example. So anything that's legendary, hand, graveyard, exile, you can cast it for free. So that's great if you have something in your hand that's expensive and legendary, cast it for free. Graveyard, bring it back. Exile, bring it back into the game. Super powerful. So Kaya is clearly a strong planeswalker in general. The issue previously, again, was in relation to the other bombs, so to speak. She was a little underwhelming next to them. But with other planeswalkers, power levels being kind of ceilinged as they're adjusting the overall power scale that we're kind of seeing, she's much stronger. And the games are more easily able to bring her into play and keep her there or recur her. So it's more likely that you can actually use her, if not to get to the alt, at least for the first two modes of the Planeswalker. And she can be an exceptional utility, even if you never alt her, to control the game, give you a grindy stranglehold over board state where an opponent just cannot get through and kill you. That +1 effectively makes you have one recurring creatures, which is always great. But when you stack your deck with creatures like Shambling Ghasts and the treasure package that became very evident, and then you combine that with getting them back to your hand and getting a 1/1 spirit token on top of that, the value generation you start amassing is intensely powerful. You're getting the value from, like, let's say Shambling Ghast, right? So you can do a -1 even when it dies, take out something on their side, you get another blocker in the 1/1 token, it comes back to your hand, you can replay it, put another counter on there, and now you have two blockers, your Shambling Ghast, which when it dies or exiles, will again make another 1/1. Now you have the other 1/1 that was just created. If it dies again, you make a treasure token maybe this turn. So you can see that value just builds and builds and builds. And that once you start grinding that part of the game out, that can be almost impossible to overcome. So she's super powerful. I love this Planeswalker. And with the 22Q, we really get a chance to kind of utilize her the way she wanted to be used in a relatively even playing field power level wise. So we're gonna build around her. I know there's there's a lot of black white control decks, but I hope we can take a look at her and really walk through how she can be used, some of the more critical thinking aspects of her game, because there's a lot to the black and white control that is complicated, and how you play her, how you use her abilities, how you set up the creatures determines how successful you are with the deck. And it's very grindy. It's not a typical control setup. So with that, we got our Kayas. Let's take a look at some of the other things we can add in here. A common popular choice is Vanishing Verse. It is a good card, but especially right now, there are more and more things being shoved into decks that are multicolored, initially specifically to kind of work around this particular card. So I might include, let's say, 1 or 2 of these, but I don't like running a full playset because it can get kind of stifled pretty badly on a lot of the matchups right now. There's a lot of like Rakdos, Grixis, is it, all of these decks where they play Galazath or Immerstrom Predator or stuff like that, and you're kind of hosed. You can't do anything, and you have a Vanishing Verse that's useless. So we'll add like 1 for now. We can adjust as we go. For the most part, the other multicolored for the black and white for what we're doing isn't too helpful. So we're pretty much going to stick with those and then go to just our normal color cards. One of the directions I like to go with this, we will add in the Professor of Symbology. This is probably one of the best value learn white, just cheap creatures you can have in a deck if you're running white, and especially once we combine that with Kaya's +1, that repeated value, even if we get to a point where we've torn through our whole learn board, which happens, if you remember, once you learn, you have the option. So we could do this from the beginning, or if we have nothing left in the learn board, you can choose instead to discard a card to draw a card. So at the very least, we could get card draw out of that. So that is always an option. It's very strong for the deck overall. So Professor Symbology, absolutely in. And I like to play into a little more the aspect of Kaya that revolves around the -7, so the legendary portion. So I like to play 1 or 2 Redain, and there's one that I almost never see anyone play. So Icing Death, Frost Tyrant. So this creature is legendary. First of all, legendary creature dragon. It's 2 white, so the double white can be a little problematic. However, we are going to fill in a relative treasure package, so for the most part that should be okay. The reason I like this, first of all, legendary. So again, once we get to Kai's alt, we'll be able to pull him back in from anywhere. Hand, graveyard, exile. Second, flying, vigilance, really good. Third, when he dies, he usually does, he makes a legendary equipment. That equipment may not seem like much up front. So what is that equipment? The equipment is, excuse me, equipped creature gets +2/+0, and whenever equipped creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls. So if you're in a stall out game and you have maybe recurred even, Icing Death here, or you have, you've cast a mascot, you have a 2/1 Inkling, and your opponent has maybe 1 flyer, now you can equip your Icing Death Frost Tongue equipment, attack in, tap down their flyer, and just start hitting, right? So even the ability to tap down just 1 creature can be the difference in the more grindy game where the opponent is able to still stall out the board state enough that you can't just directly attack in, and they're not willing to just give up the game. That can be enough to give you the slight edge. That 1 tap down effect could be the difference, and especially if you're able to still recur your creatures, even if they kill 1, right? Let's say we're putting this on Redain herself, even. We put that on Redain, and they have 2 things. We tap 1 down, they block with the other, kill the Redain. that has a +1 counter on it from Kaya that goes to our hand. Play Redain back out. Now they're down to one of the 2 flyers, right? So this is why I like it. It's a more long-term thought card. Sometimes it'll come in kind of early and give us a vigilance flyer that just smashes it, and we can kind of win with that, or a decent blocker because it can take out like a Faceless Haven. It can take out Goldspan Dragon, stuff like that, right? It can kind of align with at least a good portion of the mid-range threats somewhat early in the game. So it gives us kind of that footing there. But then longer term, it can be a key to a stalled state where we can start kind of chipping away at their state and get in and sneak for a win there. So we'll add in one of those to start. Okay, and now let's switch over to black. Take a look here. So of course, I mean, there's the eponymous treasure package. We pretty much can't really go any other way at the moment than there we go. I twitch. Than throwing this kind of assembly. And for our purposes, it still dovetails perfectly into essentially what we want to do anyway. So we want ramp, we want to be able to get out our Kaya quickly to start taking over the game. We want things that Kaya can +1 that are going to be good value generators, which all of these are. And then once we start taking over the game, these will all just kind of keep multiplying that value. We're getting over and over and over again until it's inescapable. Our board state is just insurmountable. The opponent cannot get around what we're doing, and we've kind of strangled the entire game in our favor. Okay, so obviously Blood in the Snow, gotta have those. So what do we have? So we have 5 cards left in general based on our current composition here. Sweeper, we have 1 direct removal spell, general treasure package, and we have a couple wild cards that I like. So the original list had from me had more a little less on the treasure package, excuse me, and a little more direct removal. These days with how the games kind of go, I like to mix it a bit more. So we will put in 2 Bloodchief Thirst for now, and we'll come back and adjust if we need to. So 2 of those. So what's nice about these, turn 1 you can kill something value 2 or less, then you can kick it for 2 and a black to kill whatever creature or planeswalker of any value. Sorcery speed, so not ideal there, but otherwise good. Okay, a card I particularly love, Baleful Mastery. I know a lot of other people do not like this card, mainly for the discount cost and because it allows the opponent to draw a card if you have to cast it early. So I understand that lack of value on our side in essentially giving our opponent card advantage is almost never a good thing. However, the fact that it's instant and exiles instead of destroys can be critical, especially right now where there's a lot of stuff like Immerstrom. In the last few days, I've played almost nothing but Rakdos and Grixis decks that are running Immerstrom or Mono Green that are buffing up Toski like crazy. So if you don't have exile effects, and in the case of Toski, Vanishing Verse could work, but in the case of Immerstrom, it wouldn't. So unless we get out our Kaya very quickly, we're kind of hosed there. Unless we have something like Baleful Mastery that's doing exile. Now, some might say, well, that's why you run Soul Shatter instead. So Soul Shatter, each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with the highest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control. True. However, it's a sacrifice effect and it's the highest value. So if an opponent has just dropped because they're on a crazy Rakdos treasure deck, they've just dropped Immerstrom and Goldspan. We Soul Shatter, we get the Goldspan, Immerstrom is still in play. Kind of can't do anything about it. If we try to Bloodchief's Thirst it and they have anything left, which they usually do, we can't, right? It won't do anything. They'll just make it indestructible. Our Bloodchief's Thirst will be effectively useless. So Soul Shatter is also an excellent card, mainly for the Goldspan itself, or like Emery, where it has that high ward cost, or some of the manlands where you need to just get rid of something, you've kind of wiped their board otherwise. But I still like Baleful. So we're going to add in a couple Baleful, and we will add in one Soul Shatter. So that brings us up to 60 with 24 land. And I think because of the way the deck is constructed, we look at our average, we're at 2.8 average cost. We could probably try dropping one land to starting with 23. And we can see how that works, and then go up on probably one of our removal options. So if we, let's say maybe the Vanishing Verse. Okay, now let's take a look at our lessons that we want to include. All right, grab in white, black, and colorless. So for this kind of deck, we want probably at least 2 Confront the Past, whether we are taking out an opponent's Planeswalker or additional ways to get Kaya back if we have had her and she's in the graveyard. She's going to be kind of the thorn until she's the lock. So until she's the lock, we need her kind of as much as possible and being as annoying as possible for the opponent. So the more ways we can get her back, the better. I like to have a reduced to memory. So this is another way that we can exile target non-land permanent. So as long as it's not a land, whatever it is, we can exile. So if someone gets a coma out, for example, right? All these things now that are really hard to kill, that are popular in the archetypes, reduced to memory, we'll take her out. We'll take coma out. They'll get a 3/2, and then hopefully we can blood in the snow or something. But being able to exile and not just destroy, often for the matchups where that's a problem, that's a big problem. You really need to have an answer. So for a control deck, you need to have answers. That's what this is about. So I like making sure that I have those kinds of answers. Okay, we're going to put one environmental in here. Mascot, obviously at least one. Beyond that, we could get academic probation. I think it was more useful in the previous meta in standard, not 22, just standard, when Eldraine and all of those were in play, because the overall makeup of that format was actually rather limited in the deck compositions. So if you were playing Sultai, 9 times out of 10 they were playing Ultimatum. So you knew when that was going to happen. It was super easy to anticipate a lot of the deck tempos that you were seeing. For this one, so that means like the first part of this card, choose a non-land card name, opponents can't cast spells with the chosen name. That makes the first part of this more difficult or less likely to be effective right now in the 22 queue, or maybe half the decks you'll run into, because you just won't really know necessarily. Even if it's a Simic list, they could be going for Cyclone Summoner, Coma, Epiphany, right? At 3, 4, 5 different options depending on their build out. You only name one. So if you name Cyclone Summoner and then they drop Coma, oops, like that was useless. The second mode is still kind of helpful. Choose target non-land permanent until your next turn. It can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. This was more effective in the Planeswalker era, again with the standard, not 22 format. So Ugin, can't use them, like the Garrix, all those things, right? They can't activate the ability. They can't whatever with that Planeswalker. It can still be used, obviously, so they can't attack in or block with something, but it's unlikely that the types of matches will face a single attacker or blocker not being able to do that thing for one turn is going to be the difference between winning or losing, enough that it's worth including just for that. So we'll add in all that. We'll add in another mascot. And let's see, what should we do for our last one? We could go for a introduction of prophecy, just in case we need a draw at some point. Okay, let's rename this to Kaya wins. And now we have to fix our land. All right, so we are Blood in the Snow. We have to build snow in here. Okay, get our sinkholes. Very good. And so even though we're snow, for the most part, we are going to have a lot of snow land. I'd still like to have a couple snarls in here, because these will still trigger off the snow land, plains, or swamp type and come into play untapped. So it gives us another multicolored option without coming into play tapped. Okay, we will grab our Faceless, which also can be tagged by Kaya. So once it's a creature, you can +1 it, and then if you need to jump block with it or it just dies for some reason, you will get it back to your hand. You'll get the 1/1 token, flying token. So keep that in mind. Right, so we got our Faceless. We want to try to stay away from adding in too much tap down stuff. All right, so let's see what we're looking at here. 8 swamp, 4 plains, then an additional 7 dual, plus our faceless. Okay. So like we could add in like maybe one of those, but I don't want to press it too much on the tap land, so we'll try just kind of as is. Take a look at how we do first, and we can adjust again based on play. All right, we got our snow land. Let's get a sleeve that makes a little more sense here. Maybe that one. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the deck real quick. All right, so we are loaded up with our treasure package up front. We have card draw. We have some removal here. Baleful, Soul Shatter, Vanishing Verse, Sweepers, Kaya, and then we have Redain and Icing Death. So Redain, one of the things to keep in mind is the Valkmira side of Redain is extremely powerful against numerous decks, but it's very tricky to think about, especially if you never used it on your side and the opponent's side. The part about if a source an opponent controls would deal damage to you or a permanent you control, prevent one of that damage, makes blocking for an opponent extremely difficult. If, let's say, we have both Redain and Valkmira in play, so we've played Redain and also a second card as Valkmira. If an opponent has 2 creatures that can block Redain, and they are both 2/2s, and they block Redain, Redain will not die. So each of those sources dealing 2 damage, one of that will be prevented, so only 2 damage will be dealt to Redain. On the flip side, if we're the blocker, when an opponent is assigning damage to our blockers, if we multi-block a creature, the damage from their attacker is reduced per blocker. So if they're trying to spread out that damage, they have to do at least one more damage than the toughness of each creature in order to kill any particular creature. So if they just assign damage based on the toughness of a particular creature, none of your creatures will die in a block sequence. Makes it very powerful, and something most people, when they're playing with it or against it, don't quite understand from an attack sequence standpoint. And then the tax part of it is just very powerful, and a lot of people forget. So you'll get parts where they're trying to burn your creature, remove it some way, forget about the tax, their spell fizzles because they can't pay for it. Awesome. So let's take a look how we do. Let's bring this over into the queue. Kaya wins. Oh, yes, she does. Unless she doesn't. We'll see. Let's see here. Okay. So we have 2 land here. Got Redain, 2 Skullport, so that'll make treasure if we can draw into another land. And then we have Kaya and Blood already, so we'll keep it. Hope we draw into another land. Okay, Shambling Gas is good. Alright, we'll play our Snarl. Reveal our Sinkhole. Alright, so this is the snow land. And for some reason this is crazy loud. Okay, play our Sinkhole here. swing in. Okay, perfect. We have gotten to our 3 lands. So we could play the Redain out, which I think is what I want to do here. So now if they have something that's non-creature or greater for cost, it'll be 2 more, or any snow-covered lands will come into play tapped, like that one there. So if they go into a gold span the turn after this one, we'll have a Vanishing Verse, which is not ideal exactly, but because it's targeting, but we can do that. So we could try to swing in with the Shambling Ghast, but I don't want them to learn early. I'd rather them spend mana and do that, or... Okay, we'll do it that way. It's fine. There's not much we can do about that. Okay, so this is fine. If they try to Necrotic Fume something, we have mana open. We can sack whatever they try to do it to, unless it's the Skullport. So even if they tag the Skullport, that's generally alright. Alright, so we'll just VV it. Yeah, we get a treasure. We might have some kind of removal here. They can't do Necrotic Fumes because it's a sorcery. Okay, that's fine. I mean, I'd rather them not have card draw, but in general, what are we gonna do about it? Okay, I twitch. All right, so let's bring out another Skullport, and we'll leave mana open again so we can sack this time anything that they go to Necrotic. Okay, so now we got some card draw out of it. They've just exiled an Twitch they don't get a learn out of. Okay, Emmerstrom. Alright, so let's see if they will take the bait. Yep, they did. Perfect. Okay, so I wanted them to get rid of that so we can get our 5th quote-unquote mana. Get the Kaya out. We're gonna exile the Emmerstrom. And then even if they bring out a gold span, like, fine. That's okay. We need to get rid of those. Those are a big problem. Yep. So gold span as expected. So Kaya goes down. It's alright. from here, so we could work on getting more land right this minute, but I think we should get rid of the gold span. Not so much because of the damage, but because it can act as a mana multiplier. And then if they get another image drum down, it's just another sack to protect it, which we don't want. Man, they've gotten all their draw spells, so good for them. Alright, no attack. So we need one more land and we can Blood in the Snow in general. Okay. Let's see what we get here. Shambling Ghast. Alright. So do our Ghast. So even though they have the gold span, unless they drop, so first of all, we'll just get the, yeah, we'll get a sciences. We'll get our land now, just to ensure that we have that in play. Let's grab a swamp. Pretty much the only thing that would really wreck us outside of Immerstrom, because the initial blood won't kill it, so Faceless doesn't help either, is like an Inferno. Alright, so no Immerstrom, that's good for us. So we could try to attack in here, but I don't think we really gain too much from that. So we'll do it this way. Okay, so if we bring in the Kaya directly, that's just going to eat face from Faceless Haven. So if we bring in a Skullport instead, we'll get some treasure back out of it. And then we can use that treasure as a draw. Then we have another Blood in the Snow that we could use either to kill more creatures, or we could use the alternate side to throw out planeswalkers, and then use that to recur Kaya. Alright, so we're going to take the 4. That's fine. Okay. Alright, so we are going to recur Kaya by destroying planeswalkers. We want to keep our creature up. Okay. Then we're going to put a counter on the Skullport, so it can chump the Faceless. We'll get another blocker out of that. It'll go to hand, so on and so forth. Okay. That's the turn. And then we have Baleful Mastery, so if they drop Inferno, Immerstrom, whatever, get rid of it. Okay. Block. So now it goes to hand. We get a 1/1 Spirit Creature token. So next turn, we'll have 2 blockers. So they could be holding priority just from faceless. They might have an actual spell interaction. It's tough to say. But the faceless itself would be holding priority as well. Right? Another counter. And this is how we start grinding. Right? Pass the turn. So now they can kill that as many times as they want. They can run that faceless into it 1,000 times. That'll make me very happy. So we're not going to block Kalain. We are going to let her through and keep that spirit. So we'll get another spirit, and then next turn we could kill Kalain. Alright. My turn. Thank you. Oh, perfect. Now we have our own faceless. On top of that. Excellent. Okay, Skullport. For the third time. Here we go. Pass the turn. And this is how you start strangling out the game.
Don't worry, I got you.
You just need to get to a point where you stabilize, and then incrementally you take over. It's not a lot. It's not a big flashy thing usually. It's just like a skull port, getting one ghost form, and then you keep blocking over and over until you either really lock the game or the opponent just doesn't want to do it anymore, and then they scoop. All right, pass. It's fine. We can do that all day. While this is happening, we're amassing our own large collection of treasure. Sure. Okay. That's nice. Alright, Skullport. So something to keep in mind though, Vanishing Verse will not work on Faceless Haven because it's monocolored. Faceless Haven is colorless. Boom. Alright, and then next turn, we will
Ghosting feels weird, I know.
alt our Kaya. So this time if they swing in with the Faceless again, we will throw one of our 1/1s in front of it instead. Doesn't look like they want to do that again. So they might be hoping that if they attack him with a Ghast, I'll activate Faceless, put it in front of the Ghast, which would lead to its death. So let's not do that. What we can do is pop one there and one there. Pass. So right now, I don't necessarily care if these are dead yet. We have a couple answers. Really, I just want to ult Kaya, and then from here, we'll just keep rolling her over and over. Okay, that will work. Sure.
I'm just gonna fade out.
See what they pull back. Nice. Say goodbye. Okay. Symbology. Confront the past. Get our Kaya. Back into play.
If the job is wrong, I change the terms.
That's the turn. So we're leaving these. We're not attacking with these because they have stuff like Goldspan, Inferno, maybe. So we want to make sure we have blockers that are flyers. If we just attack in with those and they Goldspan, take out our Kaya, that'll mess up our kind of tempo and flow here. So we want to make sure we leave those up. Okay. Sure. Alright, so let's see. If we block like that and like that, we'll kill their land. The land's gonna get through. Ghast is gonna do nothing.
You won't get away so easily.
Alright. Excellent. We now have a Blood in the Snow backup. And more learn. We'll just grab another Confront the Past just in case. Ghost form.
You'll be fine.
Okay, and now we're gonna start swinging in with Faceless. Okay, leave up our token blockers though. Sure. That's why we have more than one of those. All right. Say goodbye to that. All right. Get Kaya back again. She just won't die. This is what I was talking about earlier. She is the ultimate and worst thorn in your side. You cannot get rid of her when you play her well. So our opponent is trying very hard, doing a good job, trying very hard to get rid of her. It's extremely difficult. Like, they made an Immerstrom. Cool, we'll just use Kaya and get rid of it. No big deal. Alright, so before we do that, let's get a little value of our professor here. Because what we could actually do instead, so I think what we will do. Alright, my turn. Let's play this Faceless, play the professor. Reduce to memory. Reduce that. And then we're going to pump Kaya instead of minusing. There we go.
Ghosting feels weird, right?
Faster. Alright, so let's take a look. All the pretty things going away. And there you go. Opponent has had enough. So, that's the game plan. Stabilize, then incrementally outvalue every turn you can. Kaya, Kaya, Kaya. Right? Let's continue on here. This is what I love about Kaya and the Kaya game plan is it's a very thoughtful deck. So if in that last game, if we had gone with maybe a more seemingly obvious play on the original Blood in the Snow of getting back Kaya directly instead of the Skullport Merchant, if we had done that, then it's likely we would have pumped Kaya up that turn but had no target for her. So we would have gotten no value on a recursion basis. Following that, the opponent would have just smashed right into Kaya and we further get no value. So you have to think a little differently about this. Like you have to think about the overall value and trying to have things in place for Kaya rather than just having Kaya and then put things around her. You want things first and then Kaya, or to be playing Kaya to solve a problem that you're experiencing. Binding. Okay. Nice. So if we cast the Icing Death here, we will be back down to 3 treasure. We can go back up to 4 with a Shambling Gas Death, but I'd rather wait and see if we can draw into like a Deadly Dispute or something. So we can get to 5 and then start popping our counters on here. So I'm not exactly sure what our opponent is running. Interesting colors, and they're Sultai colors. But I haven't run into many Sultai decks recently, so be interesting to see what direction they're going here. Epiphany. Okay. Fine. It's pretty early. They don't really have much board state that capitalizes on that, so they get an extra draw. That's not a bad thing. But okay, Emery. That's pretty strong. Yep. It's nice. We're pretty mana hosed at the moment. That's not good for us. So if they swing in with the birds, yeah, they didn't. Interesting. If they had, we'd probably need to block with eye twitch. We're just gonna keep trying to swing in with our ghasts here. Good. Okay. We need the treasure. Perfect. Treasure. Treasure. So from here we can actually Kaya. Hope they do not have counter. They do. This is a terrible play. Terrible play. All right. It's unfortunate. Negate too. Wow, okay. Swarming. Sultai swarming. Alright. We can't Vanishing Verse the swarm. So we're gonna pass the turn. There's really not much we can do. If they swing in with Imri, we can try to verse it. It's about all we can do at the moment. Unfortunately, if we block that and kill it, they are gonna get way more skeletons, so we are not doing that. Okay, this somewhat helps. Hopefully they do not counter that like we have done to our opponents in other games. Get the environmental sciences. All right, we kind of got to land there. And we're gonna pass. We can't really afford to lose that treasure. Okay. Block Emery. And then we will hope like heck that we can draw into another land so we can blood. And also that they have not another counter. Okay, we drew a land. We cannot recur Kaya from this, but we don't really have an option here. So let's go for it. Oh wow. I mean that's game. That's a nice take on the swarm deck from the opponent there. If we had been set up better on our mana, drawn into it, we would have stood a better chance there. I think we would have, who knows win or lose, but I think we would not have lost there like that. We just didn't get the land. So if that becomes a thing, if we keep seeing that we're mana short, when we look at the deck for adjustments, that will be something that we should keep in mind and evaluate as far as what's our next step. How do we make it better? Is it fine? Do we need to make no changes? Base camp. That's a terrible card. So this land is for party, so we're playing against a party deck. But it's pretty terrible in general because it makes mana of any color, but you can only use it specifically on creatures of a specific party type. All right, we are absolutely going to get rid of that. Yep. Goodbye. And we will take 4. If we take an environmental, that would get us up to 5, but I'd rather have the reduce here. So I know this seems a little strange, and hopefully they have no more changelings. But I'd rather them have not a changeling, so this will not feed into their party count. Even though it is a creature and we just took damage from it, it's less dangerous overall, and getting rid of this one would give them 2 creatures, which not good for us. So we're going to try to tough it out here. Hopefully they'll tap into, okay, that's fine, they have no changelings. Hopefully they'll tap into something and spend their blue. Oh, Linvala. That's very bad for us. Okay. Well, the partly good news is we can we can exile Linvala. They will likely sacrifice it in response. But we need to get rid of Linvala. If we do not, if we tried to blend the snow, they would just sacrifice it and make all their stuff indestructible. So we have to get rid of Linvala. Hopefully they have no more Linvala in hand. Okay, no attack. We need to block here. Kaya will most likely die unless they just go face. Ouch. Okay. That makes more sense. Okay, we will try to keep our Skullport alive here. And yeah, we don't have an option. Here we go. So we will get the eye twitch back this time so that we can grab a learn card. Squad commander, okay. Bring out a Skullport and keep the eye twitch as a blocker. Then we can dispute if we need to. Wow. I didn't think the board state was that bad for them. They must have had some ineffectual things in their hand. That's kind of surprising to me. However, you can see, so Kaya, all she really did was get rid of one thing for us. Force them to get rid of one thing. That one thing really was a linchpin for their board state. If we had not been able to get rid of this Linvala, Blood in the Snow would have been entirely useless. This Linvala would have been sacrificed in response. Their whole board would have gone indestructible, and we might as well not have cast Blood in the Snow. It would have been useless for us. We could have attempted to, in that case, do the Planeswalker side, destroy all Planeswalkers, and then recur another creature from our side, so we keep the Skullport and then get back like the Eye Twitch or something. But in general, that would have done us in. So we had to get rid of that Linvala. All right, let's keep it rolling here. The the version that was more popularized takes a slightly different tactic um, on its overall construction, obviously, and then that affects the way it's played. So if you're playing that version versus this version, or go from that version to something more like this version, the main difference is we're gonna kill that Jespero. That has to go. That one intends to hit the board faster. And what I mean by that is it intends to have things like Elite Spellbinder come into play. Wow. We're getting scoops left and right. So it intends to have things like Elite Spellbinder come into play. Professor Symbology, like all those creatures, and then kind of culminating with the Elite Spellbinder until you get Kaya out, and then hit more quickly, attack more quickly. Whereas this one, as you can see, the game plan is more of a stall. So we sometimes attack in a little bit in the beginning, but more we're stalling, we're trying to draw into things, kind of waiting to set up the environment where Kaya is going to start incrementally buying us that lock or just opponent scoop. Because the way that I like to approach this type of deck is if we're sitting back like that, it appears like we are not the beatdown, right? So if you're familiar with Paulo's beatdown video and then the original, I'll link that. It makes it look like we're always in a position of weakness, which can entice the opponent to overcommit more than they would normally do or want to. And it gives us a different form of advantage that's not as obvious. And it forces an opponent that may not actually supposed to be the beatdown or shouldn't feel like they're the beatdown or realistically isn't the right time for them to be the beatdown, kind of force them to feel like they have to. So they start acting that way. And then we can turn the script and change what is happening in the game and take it over in a way that they can't cope anymore. And that's very powerful. That's a very powerful way to play this type of deck and control. And that's why I enjoy this version, this variant of it so much. This idea of it. So that would be the primary difference, I would say, if you're looking at this versus like the original. How do they stack up? What's the play difference? That one intends to be more aggressive on purpose, but also still forcing the opponent to overcommit because you're being aggressive. Whereas this one is being a little less aggressive, and by that logic, making the opponent want to overcommit because it looks like you are on your back foot. So you're on your back foot. Let me press the advantage, right? All right. Hopefully they don't have a fight spell. We will not block it. And again, hope there's no fight spell. Nope. Nice. Okay. High twitch, and then we have a baleful backup if they try to do a fight. We're just going to pass the turn here. Otherwise. Toski. Okay. Yep. Okay, so we are going to get rid of something. I think we're going to get rid of the werewolf because it's additional card draw. So we're going to block here, and then we will baleful the werewolf. Six, seven. And we're going to grab a mascot. Ooh, nice. Blood in the Snow also. Very cool. All right, so we're just going to cast the mascot now. Okay, and we will attack in. Vigilance. Okay, so we will block and cross block there. Hopefully they don't buff that. They very well might with an inscription, and then we just lose these. That would be sad. Okay. All right. So we also have our faceless waiting. And in our graveyard, we don't have many awesome creatures, but we can get back like Professor. All right. Seekas, so we will. So we won't be able to kill the Toski The old growth, it's going to get through anyway. If we blood in the snow, let's see here. I'd rather have the faceless in general, so we will block like that and we'll reduce some of the damage coming in there, even though they're still going to get a card draw out of that. And then next turn we're just going to blood, which will lose our Redain. They're going to keep their Toski, unfortunately. Gassed. Okay, so we have 2, 5, 6, 7. So if we blood here, but basically we can't really let them keep their Sika going easily, right? So we'll blood here, and then we can get like a professor. All right, so let's attack first. All right. Destroy all the creatures. We want to make it more difficult for that to get powered up. And then we're gonna grab Professor. And their mascot. Drop a Ghast. Grab our land. Now we just need some card draw. For Kaya. That'd be nice. Okay, it comes into play tapped. Okay, they have to swing in with Toski. We're going to block with Shambling, try to do the minus, so unless they buff it, it will die. Okay, cast. Mascot. No attack because they'll just power up Faceless and our Professor would die for no reason. Okay. Alright. Let's attempt to kill both of those. Alright, so they're down the land. We are getting nothing but land ourselves. Unfortunate. Alright, Jaspera. They can still power up their Sika. Sadly for us. Alright, 2, 3, 4. So, unfortunately, the only way we can kill the Sika is to block with pretty much all of those. We don't have much of a choice, so we can't let that keep running away. Even though they probably have another one. No, we gotta really try to make sure that that dies. Create the treasure. Minusing would have done nothing there. Soul Shatter. This is what I'm talking about. Soul Shatter, cool, except these have no cost. So we kill a Jaspera, Yippee. Alright, we have to power this up if we want to be able to block. So, unless we feel like dying, power it up, block. Oh. Oof. That's a good game for the opponent. Mono green, they're tough. Even with sweepers, it's nearly impossible to get through in a way that they can't just rebuild very easily. So they're very resilient to these types of decks, and over the last month, month and a half, the mono green players have become very cognizant of this type of matchup, so they're less apt to just overcommit their board into blood in the snow, the Kaya play. So it's a much more difficult matchup than it was 2-3 weeks ago. All right, play our tap land first. Okay, mono white. We should be able to do all right here as long as we can keep cards rolling and get into blood in the snow territory. Yeah. Okay, let's play another. I twitch. That's the turn. Luminarch, sure. Yep. So they go wide quickly, obviously. So we really need to get rolling on our mana somehow here. All right. Okay, that helps. So normally you would wait until the opponent's turn, but we want to try to make sure we hit a land drop if we're going to draw into a land. And we could have gone for a -1 and tried to take out like those or that guy, but we're trying to get to sweeper territory, so the treasure's far more valuable right now. Even though we're going to take a little bit of a beating, that's okay. See, this is exactly what in general we want. We want the opponent committing everything. They have committed essentially every single resource they have to the board. All right. We maximize the block of damage. And we will grab 1 sciences and 1 mascot. So in case we get to a point where we have 7 mana and we need a board because they've rebuilt somehow, we can compete with that. Right? So let's clear the board. Then they're going to swing in with Faceless. So let's get a Ghast so we can make another treasure. We'll be ready in general. Yep. Cool. Right, so now we're right back in it. Treasure. So now we can mascot. Ooh, or we could just do... Okay, so we could we could have played our icing death there. Could have played our icing death, sciences, and then even taken the faceless hit next turn. Um, you know, life is just a resource, so that would have been fine. Letting us keep this in play, kind of build up our board a little bit, drop the mascot, and then have a nice wide field to start swinging in with. All right, let's try one more here and see how we do. Ooh, only one colored, and then but the rest is actually not bad because we can dispute our Twitch and we have Redain. So I think we'll keep this. Later on, these could prove to be extremely helpful depending on the matchup here. Given the sleeves, it's probably some black base. Yep, okay. Sinkhole. Alright, so this... Interesting. Let's go with the immediate learn and something that could theoretically straight up kill their Clarion. White black with Clarion. It's a Magecraft. Alright. Interesting. So as I said, theoretically, kill the Clarion. That will not happen, but that is okay. Um, we could block and be down the creature. I think instead we will not block. We're gonna play the Twitch, faceless, sciences, and we will grab another swamp. So we have the double black available later. And now, unless they pump that again, we could, again, theoretically, take out their Clarion. See what the opponent has in store for us here. Okay, land. Yeah, I Twitch. Cool. Sedgemore. Interesting. All right. We will let that through. Okay, so right now I'm going to play the Valkmira side of this, and we're going to sit. So these can still directly deal damage. These now deal 0 damage. Okay, Clarion. Alright, so block there. Take out the Sedgemore. And one of these will survive. Looks like probably the professor. Okay, so we're going to take 0 from those and 2 from that. So we'll get down to 16. It's fine. Yep. Okay, I twitch those. Sure. Ooh. Beautiful. Kaya. Okay. I have a lot of colorless though, so I think before we play her, we will get out a Skullport and a Shambling. Or no, we will just bring out the Skullport and then we can leave up the Deadly, and I want to keep the treasure open just so we have options, like maybe Blood in the Snow if we need to. They do some kind of mass buff on their end. And we can always Deadly Dispute without getting rid of a creature and using the treasure, which we'll get another treasure back. Yeah, see like Leon and Light Scribe there. So now one spell will take 1 damage from each of those, 2 from that, 3 from that. So this is one of the powers, right? Valkmira saving our bacon a little bit here, letting us set up our board state and get to a point where we can like Blood here, Kaya, whichever one we want. We could bring the Kaya down, get rid of the Leonin. See what we are looking at after this turn. I mean, it might seem like the opponent's roping, but this is a relatively tricky board state. So I don't blame if they are actually just trying to figure out their best next step, what that step would be. Because they obviously have a larger board presence. However, right now, unless they start casting stuff, it's really not. Okay, so they just either are roping or decided to do nothing. So we're gonna try to capitalize on that a little bit. We're gonna get okay, and they scooped. So like I was saying, the opponent there, take a look. So they had a technically superior board state. However, Valkmira was doing a beautiful job leveling that playing field for us. It effectively made these all non-aggressors. So even if they attack in with these, they're nothing. So the Leonin starts changing that picture, but they have to cast into that. And if they weren't really willing to commit, because we also just got rid of their Sedgemoor, that makes it more complicated. So they have to start overplaying their spells that they were needing to use for their setup, their overall game plan, to get around our damage reduction. So it really changed the dynamic of this game in a pretty significant way for them. So even if they had attacked in here and let's say they cast that Sciences, they could deal a relatively substantial amount. We'd block in a few places, so it would be less damage for us. Um, and then the turn after that, we can Blood in the Snow, wipe the board, and we still have Valkmira, right? It's not a creature, so that stays. So we were in a really good spot. We were just about to really get our lock in place, and it seems like the opponent kind of realized that. So this is my take on the current meta appropriate Kaya deck. Like I said, my original version had a little less on the treasure and a little more on the removal aspect, but I think right now, for the most part, you really want these coming up for key parts, and otherwise, you're setting up to get your incremental value until you lock with Kaya, do your sweepers for your recursion, and you're using some of these other tools to reshape the face of the game enough to stall, um, make the opponent kind of off balance, overcommit, undercommit in the right ways that let us start pivoting the game and what's happening. So before they know it, um, our little incremental gains, which may not seem like gains to them, have turned into a stranglehold that they can't get out of anymore, and we have taken over the game completely. There's no way out for them anymore. So this is our Kaya wins deck. Hope you enjoy it. Questions, comments, leave them below. If you like the video, please like, subscribe. Find us on Discord, website, and as always, send us your ideas, combos, whatever you want to see. Love to build it out, do some runs, see what we can do with that, and have an excellent day wherever you are. Thanks.